Now, is there anything in particular you'd like me to talk about? Yes.
I wanted to find out where you got the idea of Mary Russell and Sherlock Holmes, because in the other books, he doesn't have a love life. I know of.
The question is where I got the idea of Mary Russell and Sherlock Holmes, because in the other books he doesn't have a love life. I'm not sure in these books he has much of a love life. I think when I first started writing the Russell and Holmes books, the Sherlockians of the world were not really approving, and I think that they were afraid that I was going to go in the direction of that little-known subgenre of Sherlockiana, Sherlockian erotica. And I think their relief was so considerable when they discovered that my hot, steamy scenes were things like him brushing her hair, that the Sherlockian world has since clasped me to their manly breasts in relief. And in fact put me to work. I'm going to be editing a story for them. I mean, this is really clever. If you want somebody to make sure they come over to your side, you make them a member at a great honor, and then you put them to work. So I somehow found I was made a Baker Street irregular in January. My investiture name is the Red Circle, for those of you who know the Conan Doyle stories. And within 2 weeks, the two people who named me had talked me into being the editor for a book for them. So, that's how it goes. The price you pay for being a Sherlock Holmes. Yeah. However, no, in the Conan Doyle stories, he does not have a love life that one knows. Certainly, Dr. Watson does not reveal it. There is one reference in the story, A Scandal in Bohemia, to this woman who bests him, who gets the better of him, Irene Adler, who knocks him down a notch in his self-esteem and takes on the title of, at some point, Sherlock Holmes went back to meet this woman and became something more than just an opponent. There are a number of writers who speculate that Irene Adler and Holmes had a son. Conan Doyle did not, but there are a number of writers who do. And I think one of the theories was that their son became Nero Wolfe. I have nothing to say about that. However, there's another very interesting theory that it's tied up with the ley lines in Britain and all some very interesting things. That apparently there is a family in Britain that has given rise to all the great detectives of the 20th century. So, I leave that to you to develop. Other comments or questions? Yes.
I was looking at Mary Russell's timeline. It's been a little while ago, and she's really young, and over a fairly short span of time, just really a few years, she goes through a lot of emotional upheaval. And I just wonder, when does she ever get to have a nervous breakdown?
Did you read Locked Rooms?
Yeah, so when does that actually, we see her grieve for Ruskin, and we see her, go through the emotional turmoil of Locked Rooms, but it's just like one body piled on another body. And they're not trivial events, and so...
Well, of course, one of the problems with having a more leisurely approach to their stories is that Holmes is not getting any younger. And
Right.
so, if I don't sort of cram the stories in there, he's going to be racing across London at, age 102. So, yeah, I think that I fit, 8 books into 12 months over the last, so
Yeah.
we're not moving through history awfully fast, no. But, yeah, I think that that's something that I have to keep in mind as I'm writing each story is that there is an accumulation of trauma that's going on. At the same time, you know, this is a series, and you don't want each book, you know, resting too heavily on the books that went before. Mm-hmm. So I occasionally will make reference to it. I think in this book it has Mycroft reflecting about what she went through in San Francisco. So there is acknowledgement of it, but without dwelling on the things. Yeah. But yes, poor Russell. I actually feel even worse than inflicting bodies on her and various traumas is the fact that the poor thing is never warm.
Right. She's always
I mean,
cold.
she always, every case that she's had for the last however many years has been cold. You know, either on Dartmoor or, you know, in wintertime, Palestine. Or, you know, where did she go? She went to India, but she didn't stay in the tropics more than 2 minutes. And then she goes to San Francisco, and you think, oh, and then you realize San Francisco is always foggy. So, you know, poor thing is always cold. And she gets home, and it's August, and oh, isn't it lovely? And she ends up in Scotland. Yeah. So, you know, honestly, she must be just covered with chilblains and have terrible arthritis by this time. So I must send her someplace warm eventually.
You could always resort to laudanum.
I'm sorry?
You could always resort to laudanum.
Laudanum is probably a good idea for the woman, yeah. I think so. I'm glad you guys are getting into the spirit. Yeah.
You had asked about the age difference, but the whole thing of it's quite an age difference. I mean, I just wondered why such an age difference.
Okay, well, some of you have heard this story before, but we'll make the rest of you laugh. When I was, when I first published, I think it was O Jerusalem, the publisher decided that this was one of the books they wanted to promote at the, I think it was the ABA, the Booksellers Association. And so what they do is they have these huge convention halls. And in the cellars, usually, they put this row of tables and fence it off so that people can line up and get a free book. And the book they were giving out was, I think it was O Jerusalem. So they give you one of your publishers, and so I had my publisher here, and who is, you have to envision sort of Bette Midler, I mean that kind of New Yorker. And I'm sitting in a chair with a little card table, and I can't see, you know, past the first 2 or 3 people. But the fact that she's hovering over me like this and slapping the book down as soon as she possibly can indicates to me that there's a fair crowd of people there, and we only have this place for an hour. So she's slapping the book. So I'm doing the thing of, you know, I sign my name if they want their name in it, fine, and you know, thank you very much, enjoy the book. Thank you very much, enjoy the book. Thank you very much, enjoy the book. And this man comes and plants himself right in front of me, and he leans forward and he says, I wanted to ask you about this age difference. And meanwhile, Nita is standing there going, you know, and you can sort of hear her going, move, 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 move. And so I say, my husband is 30 years older than I am, so I know quite well what a 60-year-old man is capable of. Which sort of didn't come out like I meant it. You know, what I was talking about was, you know, can he haul the garbage cans out, or chase the children, or, you know, important stuff like that. But this poor man turns bright red, just flushes bright, you know, that color of red, and snatches a book and flees. And Nita's just peeing herself. I'm saying, what? And at 8 a.m. on Monday morning, all of Random House, all 23 floors of Random House know that Laurie R. King is making dirty jokes to her family. So yeah, I mean, my husband is 30 years older than I know one. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much.
No, I think that I think that we tend to think of, especially when we're younger, we tend to think of people in their 60s as being old.
They're
But
not,
those of
trust
us who
me.
are- who are getting older. I mean, I just have spent the last 6 weeks climbing up and down and 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 up and down in Lisbon and Morocco and the south of France, and up and down and up and down and up and down. And I actually don't think I could have done that at the age of 30. I think, there's a certain grim determination that comes on. After you hit 50 and you say, okay, I'm up for it. And
It's
I
like
think
the joke about the bulls.
the joke about the
Well, no, that's probably, never mind.
You're talking about the old bull and
The old bull and the young bull.
Yeah,
I
Right.
think I can.
no,
No.
no, it's the difference.
And for those of you who want to hear the joke about the bulls, come and talk to these two guys. Bulls. The you. This is getting out of hand quickly. Yes.
Does your Sherlock Holmes look anything like Robert Downey Jr.?
Does my Sherlock Holmes? I like the assumptions there. Does my Sherlock Holmes look anything like Robert Downey Jr.? I really hadn't thought about that. I think one of the my only quibble with that movie, which I really enjoyed, I had a great time with it. But my only quibble was that one of the things that is emphasized a number of times in Conan Doyle's stories is that Holmes was bizarrely neat and tidy, and that he, even when he's living in a Stone Age hut in Dartmoor, he manages to get fresh collars. So that that one thing, I really thought, I can see why they did it. I mean, I don't object to it, but it was not Holmes. So no, my Holmes would have white collars. Lunatic, yes, I think. But that's one of the differences in writing. Were I to have been writing pastiches set in the Baker Street days when Holmes was in his 30s or 40s, it would have been a very different person. And I think that one of the changes that comes not only with age, and he is in his 60s in these stories, but with the fact that he has been through this absolute and complete upheaval of his social order. I mean, Conan Doyle didn't write any stories set after the Great War, because as far as he was concerned, Holmes's England died in the trenches, and Holmes had no place in the England that was left. And I think that to some extent that's true. The Holmes that existed before his last bow, the story in 1914, would not have been at all the same Holmes that existed in 1919 when this war was over. So part of those changes are things that are reflected in the difference between the Conan Doyle Holmes and my Holmes. The fact that not only he is older, but he has watched his society die around him, and he's had to reinvent himself. Now, from a writer's point of view, this is ideal, because how I say he reinvents himself depends very heavily on what happened in the war. I mean, the fact that the aristocracy died out, more or less. I mean, there were years when they just didn't issue Burke's peerage because they couldn't keep up with who had died. The fact that inheritance laws changed and people could no longer support big estates meant that the aristocracy was forced to give over their castles and things to places like the National Trust. So that you have this huge shift in British society that is reflected in a more thoughtful, less physical Holmes, less certain, I think. But that the Holmes that I write reflects the Britain of the 20s rather than the Britain of Victoria. in the weight loss.
One of the things I've enjoyed about the novels is the use of characters from other fictional series. And I'm wondering if it would be possible to have Mary meet Harriet Vane one of these days.
She's met Lord Peter, why not? Yeah, the question is, would it be possible among the other fictional characters that Russell comes across, would it be possible to meet Harriet Vane? The reference to Lord Peter in A Letter of Mary was, should we say, unauthorized? And I have promised the estate that I wouldn't do it anymore. It would be fun to write a Lord Peter book, although, you know, there's not an awful lot of time has passed since then. When was Have His Carcass written?
Probably about 10 years, in timeline, about 10 years after where you have said it. With the letter.
They more or less overlap. I'd have to look at the chronology, but I think the early Sayer stories have been published. But anyway, I don't know if we've met Harriet yet. But yeah, I mean, it would be interesting. There's a lot of fictional characters that would be fun. But you know, I also have a lot of non-fictional characters that would be fun. Although I have to say that having written about Dashiell Hammett, you know, I decided to write this book set in San Francisco, and so it's 1924. And I think, what was going on in San Francisco in 1924? I wonder if Dashiell Hammett was around. Oh yes, great.